Hey there, my name is Przemek, and today I got for you a retro review of this compilation, The Absolute Supper from Cold Meat Industry. Although I don't feel totally comfortable about calling this this video and this series in general retro reviews, because what is the point of reviewing albums that have been known for years inside and out? Everyone, I mean fans of ambient or industrial music, have probably come across this compilation at some point, and I bet many of you know it well by heart. So it is not a review in the strict sense, but rather a small retro story, a tale, a walk down memory lane. So today I'm your raconteur, taking you in the journey to 1990s Sweden. I haven't listened to The Absolute Supper for many years, I mean in its entirety, maybe 15 years or more. So I thought I listen to it, see how it sounds today, compare it with my feelings from back then, and on this occasion I'll tell you some things, although I realize that for many of you I probably won't say anything new or groundbreaking, but maybe I awaken some memories. So let's set off on this journey into past together. I won't discuss the cold meat industry label history today, maybe some other time, although I don't know if it makes sense, because soon there will be this professional documentary about the label, which I am very curious about. But today we are focusing on The Absolute Supper, a compilation from 1997, celebrating the 10th anniversary of Roger Carmanic's label, and bearing the catalog number CMI 50. At least up to a certain point in time, every 10th Cold Meat album was a compilation in one form or another. Of course, we also got compilations outside this 10 multiplied, like in Shadow of Death, CMI 2. It's a very short 7-inch vinyl with 4 tracks, or in the Butcher's Backyard, CMI 19, a double CD, which was a farewell to Sound Source, the Cold Meat Industry sublabel. And of all these 10 multiplied, so to speak, compilations, some of them were a bit far-fetched, like Brighter Death Now, Greatest Death. It was number 60, which was essentially a set of favorite tracks from the Great Death, Brighter Death Now albums. I don't remember exactly how it was done. Then there was, I think, some voting for the best tracks, which eventually ended up on the Greatest Death. Well, never mind. Or number 90, Perception Multiplied, Multiplicity Unified, a compilation of Peter Anderson's project from Raison d'être. Okay, it was 100% legit compilation, but still quite unusual. And in later years, I mean after the year 2000, Roger Carmanic didn't stick to this rule so rigidly, and for example numbers 110, 130, 150 were just regular albums by some single artists. But those most important compilations are always 10 multiplied. Harmonic Collection, CMI 20. And even wolves hid their teeth and tongue wherever shelter was given, CMI 30. Aesthetics of Cruelty, CMI 70. Flowers Made of Snow, CMI 140. Roger liked to release compilations, we liked to listen to them. Generally it seems that the industrial or post-industrial scene is exceptionally compilation friendly even today, and to be honest, I don't see anything wrong with that. I don't remember my own history with the Absolute Supper. I guess it wasn't anything spectacular. It just that as soon as I found out about its existence, I knew I had to buy it one way or another, and as soon as the opportunity arose, I did buy it. Where, when, and from whom, I don't remember. Certainly not. It was not for the premiere in 1997, but it could have been 1999, maybe 2000. I was familiar with the cold meat industry already, that's for sure. But the Absolute Supper also opened my eyes to some new projects that accompany me up to this day. This is how it looks like. It's a very aesthetic compilations, although my copy is a bit damaged as you can see, because it was used very often. This is how it looks like. These are those two. This one is missing because it's in my CD player for this one. And inside we also have those two booklets. One, Necrology 1987-1997, which presents all the releases by cold meat industry up to that moment, and also there's a short history of the label. I don't know if it was written by Roger Carmanik or someone else, but never mind. And also some photos of flyers or ads and this kind of stuff, and of course the photo from the slaughterhouse or a meat industry. Well, the second booklet, let me show you, presents the Absolute Supper again. This photo from a slaughterhouse, and the biographies of all the artists that featured on this compilation. So, as you can see, very nicely designed release in terms of graphics. Carmanik knew exactly that he had to prepare something special for the 10th anniversary, and he certainly succeeded. I like to call the Absolute Supper the mother of all ambient industrial compilations, because of course there were great compilations released earlier, like and also outside cold meat industry, like let's say Death Odors from Slaughter Productions, this label of Marco Corbelli from also Atrax Morgue project. But I think the Absolute Supper was one of the first released on such a grand scale, of course, within the post-industrial framework. So editorially refined, and probably also together with several other regular releases, intended to be kind of a boost, maybe aimed at going beyond this small ambient industrial world, in order to gain new fans from outside this bubble. Did it work out in a longer period of time? Maybe to some extent, yes. Those years definitely made the label interesting for the gothic dark wave fans, thanks to Arcana, or metal fans thanks to Mortis and MZ412. And this compilation was like opening another gate, introducing new artists to a wider audience. And as I said, partially he succeeded, but looking at it from the perspective of almost 30 years, I think he succeeded, but not to the extent he could have expected. Some fans stayed with the label. Some treated the card meat industry as a curiosity. I honestly thought that with time this label would gain more fame and fit more comfortably among other metal gothic darkwave labels. Today, you ask a metal or gothic fan, do you know cold meat industry? Most will probably answer yes. Yes, I do. But if you ask, do you listen to it regularly due to their releases? Probably a handful of, of nutcases like you or me will say yes. So these are, few of my thoughts. So now let's take a look at the musical content of the album. In fact, I only just realized that the album doesn't have the exclusive compositions only. Some of them were included later on regular albums of some projects. I haven't checked everything, I have to admit. I don't remember some of them, like the opening track by Inslaughter Natives, project by Juni Havokainen. I am not sure if this track was included of any of his later albums. Anyway, out of all the classic projects from Cold Meat, Inslaughter Natives I got to know quite late. It wasn't really a fan of such orchestral industrial, but it cannot be denied that it is one of the pillars of the early stage of label's activity, defining it in a way and its direction, where a cold meat industry was heading at that time. And the song itself, Inri, Raped by the Cross, titularly blasphemous, dynamic, although today in the context of sound you can already feel the passage of time. But this also is the charm of this cold Scandinavian sound, a bit archaic but still inimitable. The second track is the second and third is The Protagonist, which is present with 2 tracks on this compilation as the only one apart from Ild Frost. These are songs that were later released on the debut Orebur in slightly different, better sounding versions. Sorry, my cat is in the litter. And yeah, getting back to The Protagonist, I don't like this synthetic, quasi neoclassical, but I have a soft spot for The Protagonist. Or maybe Magnus Sandstrom was simply good at what he does. This synthetic pomposity doesn't irritate because these are simply nicely arranged compositions. Ah, damn it. Sorry for that. I like them, and generally I like both Orebur and Songs of Experience albums. And with hindsight, it's impossible not to notice the influence that The Protagonist more or less consciously had on the orchestral martial industry. Okay. On orchestral martial industrial style of the first decade of the 21st century. Whether I should be grateful to Marcus for this or not, it's another matter, but The Protagonist still cool. The track number 3 we have. Yeah, he got out from the litter and now he's playing. Sorry for the noises. I can't do anything about it. Ordo Equilibrio with the track The Perplexity of Hybris, I Glorify Myself. This track also appeared on Conquest, Love and Self-Perseverance album. I think we could divide Ordo Equilibrio history into three stages, just roughly. Ambient, industrialized, apocalyptic folk, first two albums, neoclassical apocalyptic folk, and gothicized apocalyptic folk, and some transitional albums in between. This kind of transitional album is Conquest, Love and Self-Perseverance, and at the same time it's the same time it is probably the closest to apocalyptic folk in its pure form. It's also my favorite Audio Equilibrio release, so The Absolute Supper finds Thomas Peterson's project in the best form. A nice acoustic track, although on Conquest, Love, Self-Perseverance there are a few that I like more. And by the way, my favorite Ordo Equilibrio track ever is Angels of the Highest Order, We Are Seraphim, from the debut album Ripping the Fallen. For me it is top 3 dark neo-apocalyptic folk songs ever. Back then it was a band that was a bridge between World Serpent and Cold Meat Industry, nicely mixing cold Scandinavia sound with acoustic moods, and I think that this early Ordo Equilibrio still holds up well even today. Basically they had their own style from the very beginning, one that is hard to confuse with anyone else. I'm not a huge fan of today's version of Ordo Equilibrio, or rather Ordo Rosarius Equilibrio, but it doesn't bother me much. Besides, my girlfriend likes it, so sometimes I listen to it, I got used to it, and it's rather harmless to me. I almost forgot on the album Triumph of Light and Thy 13 Shadows of Love, there's the song This Absolute Supper, Second Consecration. I wonder if it's a coincidence of if Roger Carmanik took the title for his compilation from that song.
Among the roses where I stand, torn and scratched, disguised by blood, I watch the puppets stagger in their own life, caught in the web of perplexity. I glorify myself. I glorify myself for who I am. I glorify myself.
Okay, what do we have next? Sanctum. On the album, the title is marked with some symbol, and on Discogs, this title is The Liberian. So I am a bit confused. Sanctum, a total classic, a completely unique project that mixing industrial, gothic, dark rock, and neoclassical, was not afraid to experiment on one hand, and on the other was able to make such incredibly catchy songs that you won't get out of your head even after one listen. Their debut, Lupus in Fabula, was one of the first albums from Cold Meat Industry I got to know in its entirety, and I remember thinking at the time, if other albums from this label are like this, then this is a completely new quality in music. Time has shown that I went a bit overboard with this new quality, although the label itself is of course still a cult and loved to the grave. But Sanctum, especially the debut, I can't say a bad word about it. Still amazing, captivating, brutal and romantic at the same time, harsh and delicate. And this track from the Absolute Supper, the Liberian, could easily be on the Lupus Fabula as well. It's great. Later they released another album, Let's Eat. Not bad, although not as breathtaking as the debut. And after that some compilations, live recordings, nothing really special. It's a pity because there was a potential for reaching even higher. But the debut will stay in my heart forever. And similarly to Ordo Equilibrio, here we have Sanctum in its best shape and the best lineup with that amazing vocalist Lina Robert. Puissance, which is not a French project but Swedish, obviously, by Fredrik Söderlund and Henrik Möller. Love Incinerate is Puissance in its early stage, synthetic, martial, quasi-neoclassical, and today it sounds a bit outdated, just as outdated is this controversial aura around the project, calling for total nuclear annihilation and complete eradication of the human race from the face of the earth. Something tells on me that there were some rumors that one of the musicians was in a psychiatric hospital. Ignore it, I may be confabulating because I don't remember. In any case, whether all these views were only meant to stir up those controversies around the project, or whether the musicians actually believed in it or still believe in it, and it's better not to let them near the weapons of mass destructions. I don't know really. But today this music doesn't make the same impression as it did back then, although it still has some nostalgic value, and listening to Love Incinerate or Mother of Disease and those declamations predicting imminent Armageddon, well, I had that attitude like 25 years ago as well, against everything. This kind of teenage nihilism. And today I am more peaceful towards the world. I get news of the coming global war on the internet every day, so I don't necessarily look for such content in music today, but sometimes it's nice to go back to the past and to remember your mindset from those years, often driven or intensified by the music. And that's what I have with Puissance today. Not really for full albums, but for individual pieces, sure, why not, like Love Incinerate. Which isn't as bad when I think about it now. It's pretty cool, it's nice to listen. However, when it comes to Puissance in general, I don't like this later dark synth pop incarnation of Puissance. Really, I tried, but it just doesn't work for me. Arcana. Here I might start with a metaphor that you probably wouldn't ever expect here on my channel. One of the specific movie subgenres are those films about adventurers or treasure hunters, King Solomon's Mines, Romancing the Stone, National Treasure, or recently Uncharted. And in my opinion, there is a film that is kind of above all these films I mentioned a moment ago. Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, of course. A perfect adventure movie. The peak of the genre. And when I think of, say, war films, there is, of course, the outstanding Apocalypse Now, my favorite film ever. But I still want good war movies. Or sci-fi, there is, of course, A Space Odyssey or Blade Runner. And these are generally better films than Indiana Jones. But that doesn't mean that I don't want to watch more sci-fi movies. I want more sci-fi. But when it comes to adventure films, after indie, all the rest doesn't matter to me at all. I'm not interested in this genre at all. I've seen the best and I don't need more. Dead Can Dance is a kind of Indiana Jones of the gothic neoclassical genre, and within the realm of a dying sun is Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. After listening to this album, I felt that I don't need more of this type of music. This is the maximum that can be achieved in this genre. Sorry. And all those other imitative projects that were formed later may be good or very good, but for me they are completely unnecessary. If they weren't there, my world wouldn't be poorer even for a bit. And I know this is a bit unfair to Arcana, a professional project with a sense of good melody and generally very good in its genre. But I can't approach this project as something aspiring to at least refer to the masters, but having no chance in confrontation with them. Just my opinion. I know the project has a lot of fans, but I say just for myself and that Arcana is as successful as Needless. In other types of music, I can listen to imitators, epigons, and it doesn't matter to me. But in this particular one, the gap between the leader and the peloton is so big that, okay, let them play, but it's the same with the track on The Absolute Supper. Good, nice, but if it wasn't there, nothing would have happened. Winds of the Lost Soul, that song that was later released on the album The Last Embrace. And Mortis, probably the most recognizable artist outside cold meat industry circles. Once the bass player of Emperor, later he took on the image of an old hag and invented music that many years later someone called Dungeon Synth. And I appreciate that fact. Inventing a completely new genre is no joke, but my attitude towards Dungeon Synth is, to put it mildly, not very enthusiastic. It is naive, archaic, probably works well as a background for reading young adult fantasy or some RPG sessions, but I do neither of these, so I don't need this Mortis to be happy in life. Sorry, cats again. I used to listen to it. I even liked this album Kaiser auf ein Dimension Ukient a bit, but not enough to become a die-hard Mortis fan. However, it is hard not to notice the significance of this project for the cold meat industry, which mainly thanks to Mortis and his previous musical and personal connections opened the eyes of many metalheads to cold meat industry and post-industrial music or ambient music in general. As I said, like I said before, most were only briefly interested in what cold meat had to offer, but some of those people stayed with the label for years, and for that Mortis deserves some respect. And the track on The Absolute Supper is what it is. Solid dungeon synth, but with a kind of fairground feeling. These are not dungeons and dragons, but rather some kind of medieval market square on or quasi-medieval, during some festival. Pantomimists, harlequins, mimes, cheap fire tricks shows a slightly circus atmosphere, but still, even when I was getting to know this compilation, it was one of my least favorites. And I prefer old school fantasy in retro video games rather than in music. Yeah, I grumbled a bit in those two last tracks, but that's it, because the third act of the first disc is definitely my favorite part of the compilation. Desideri Marginis. I won't get into much detail about this project because I have already discussed it a few times on this channel, and I also have a Desideri Marginis artist feature video in mind, sometime in the future, but I would like to address a certain issue from the booklet. Namely, it is said here, small font, sorry. Desideri Marginis, one of the latest additions to the label, not only comes from the same little town as Raison d'être, but even the same street. So it is not really surprising that the similarities reach beyond the demographies and into the musical field. And so I think it's a bit unfair to treat Desideri Marginis like that. I mean, I know at the time it was a young and unknown project, and it had to be advertised somehow. But was it a good idea to present it like a copycat of Raison d'être? I'm not so sure. On the first album, Songs of Ruins, maybe some parallels were still noticeable, but time has shown that the creative paths of both projects diverged more quickly, quite quickly. Peter Anderson went his own way, Johan Levin went his own way. And thanks to that, we have two projects that can be today described as legendary and have shaped the dark ambient genre over the years. Maybe the cold meat industry boss was a man of little faith in this case, and didn't believe that in the long run Desideri Marginis would achieve such success. Or maybe it's just a simple populist advertising trick, because after all, such slogans also work, and in the end justifies the means. And Chaos Undivided, the track from Desideri Marginis on this compilation, is great and would easily fit on Songs of Ruins, and perhaps it would be one of the most captivating fragments of that album. And again, after that we have Sephiroth, the project by Ulf Söderberg, who released two albums on Cold Meat Industry, Cathedron and Draconian Poetry. Both of them are fetching crazy prices at auctions today, and I'm kicking myself for not buying them when they were released. Besides, his later works, recorded under his own way, under his own name, are not the cheap ones either. Sephiroth incorporates incredibly dynamic tribal passages into this very specific Scandinavian dark ambient of the end of the 20th century, and this, combined with the Lovecraftian feeling, gives an astonishing effect. And Wolf Tribes, the track on The Absolute Supper, is an amazing piece with a great build-up. I don't know what else I can say about it. Sephiroth has become a cult among dark ambient fans overall these years. due to its enigmatic nature and the fact that it has released only 2 albums without breaking itself into small pieces, without really re-releasing old materials and some compilations, live albums, whatever, and because of its extraordinary musical class, dark ambient of the highest order. Raison d'être. And I won't talk about raison d'être in detail either. A legend, one of the most important projects in the history of the genre. I talk more about this project in my top 50 favorite dark, deep, ambient albums series, where raison d'être appears twice. And raison d'être, again, like some other albums on The Absolute Supper, is at the peak of his form. It's between the albums, within the depths of silence and formations, and in sadness, silence and solitude. Or at least it was Peter Anderson's first peak, because the second one came with the Stains of Embodied Sacrifice album. I know it's an unpopular opinion, but I consider that album to be outstanding. And on The Absolute Supper we have raison d'être with the track called The Verge of Somnolence, and it's one of my favorite pieces of raison d'être ever, a masterpiece of sacral dark ambient. I remember a few years ago I was at the Ténèbres de Profundis festival in Athens, Greece, when the creme de la creme of dark ambient and death industrial have performed, raison d'être, Desideri Marginis, Svartsin, Kammerheit, In Slaughter Natives, Brighter Death Now, Deutsche Nepal, and a few others. Not being a big fan of dark ambient live shows, and believing that this music is best listened to at home alone, that was an absolutely delightful event. And during that show, as an encore, raison d'être completely unexpectedly played The Verge of Somnolence. It was the most beautiful moment of my life when it comes to concerts, not only ambient concerts, but concerts in general. It's a wonderful piece, really. And the first CD, of course, ends with Benny Nielsen, but not as Mordhound, but as Hazard. Hazard was Benny's more experimental project, often based on field recordings. I really liked his debut, Lech, and up to this day I wonder if it's a tribute to Lech Wałęsa, or maybe to Lech Poznań, a famous Polish football club. They have been playing a lot of suites, so who knows, Incidentally, on another compilation, The Last Bleak Days, Hazard appears with a different Polish-sounding title, Maszt. I don't know this word in English. It's that, this pole on a boat when you hang sails to catch the wind. That's mashed. And on the Absolute Supper we have a track with an English title, a very cool one. It's who blew out the Northern Lights, and it's a solid piece of experimental ambient. I remember it didn't impress me many years ago enough to delve deeper into Hazard. That happens thanks to the aforementioned Mashed, which is a minimalist masterpiece. But today I appreciate and like this Who Blew Out the Northern Lights. Okay, we close this first disc with this one. Yeah, this video will be very long. I am already looking forward to editing and rendering it because it's already 36 minutes and we are halfway through. Yeah, the second CD. This name couldn't be missing here. Roger Carmanic's flagship project, and at the same time the noisiest track on the compilation. Brighter Death Now, of course, and undeniable classic of noise death industrial, which, in Slaughter Natives, I was discovering a bit later. This also resulted from the fact that power electronics and the death industrial as genres didn't attract my interest at the time. You could say that it was still too extreme for me back then in the late 90s. Over time, of course, this changed, and today I like both genres very much, but back then, of course, there were things that spoke to me, like Megaptera. About Megaptera I'll talk a bit later. But when I listened to I Wish I Was a Little Girl, I remembered my first thought. Exactly. It sounds like a spinning washing machine. I never skipped this track because somehow it always calmed me down, just like the sound of washing machine calms me down. I can sleep normally to it. It doesn't irritate me in any way. Sorry. But back then, this fragment wasn't one of my favorites. Again, over time it changed. Today I really appreciate both this piece and Brighter Death Now in general, in its entirety. It's not some great extreme sound-wise, but there's no denying that some dirt and perversion and filth pours out of this music, more than many of today's death industrial or power electronics artists who consider themselves as extreme. Okay, now we will save some time because I don't have much to say about Frozen Faces, Deutsche Nepal's Lina Baby Doll's side project, and it seems to me that this is the only track of this project I have ever heard. Wrotycz Records, a Polish label, reissued the debut several years ago, but I have never heard it. But the track itself on this compilation, Cyclone B Doll, is very good. It's like noise power electronics, but played in a more song-like form. Also a bit more like drone doom or shoegaze, played on distorted guitars, pedals, knobs, and other analog devices. And it's a surprisingly accessible composition. But number 3 on CD 2 is an absolute legend. MZ 412 or Maschinenzimmer 412 with the track NBS Act 1 Begravening, later included on their best album Nordic Battle Sides. I love MZ 412 unconditionally. Their blasphemous black industrial has always made an incredible impression on me, and as did the titles of some tracks, which I won't even mention here because YouTube will ban me. This is another band that attracted fans from the metal scene, like Mortis, but more, it's my opinion, more with the message, atmosphere, and image, which was black metal to the core, because the music itself was closer to the industrial style than to metal, although it was quite extreme at some point, just like black metal. Well, anyway, these are just pigeonholes. What's important is that MZ412 is a completely unique group, and on the compilation we have these guys at their best. I mean, it's not the best track on the compilation, and it's not the best track from Nordic Battle Science, but it fits perfectly into the atmosphere of both the Absolute Supper and this full later full album. And this German phrase repeated all the time like a mantra. Wenn weiß die Farbe des Todes ist, dann ist schwarz die Farbe des Lebens, has been etched in my head and memory forever. And speaking of Nordic battle science, I mentioned earlier that at that time I didn't listen much to noisier varieties of industrial. There is this very harsh fragment on this album that stands in opposition to what I've said. It's this only one track. I'm talking about Satanjugend 2 Global Conquering. Teenage drama alert. I was dumped by a girl at the time. I was very angry. Well, what I can say, I wanted to destroy the world. And I listened to this track a lot back then, over and over again, full volume. And damn, it helped. I calmed down. I stopped being pissed off at the whole world. As they say, music has charms to soothe the savage breast, even MZ412.
Wenn weiß die Farbe des Todes ist, dann ist schwarz die Farbe des Lebens. Wenn weiß die Farbe des Todes ist, dann ist schwarz die Farbe des Lebens. Wenn weiß die Farbe des Todes ist, dann ist schwarz die Farbe des Lebens.
Yeah, Megaptera. I mean, where is this book? Ah, here. I wanted to show you something. I mean, look at this guy. You know, what a funny looking fella. You'd like to go out with him to the pub for a beer and listen to some rude jokes. And then suddenly he jumps out with this Don't Desecrate the Dead, one of the most terrifying tracks in the history of death, industrial and dark ambient. Dark as fuck, soullessly mechanical. And then those samples from Warlock, a cheesy fantasy horror known from VHS tapes. On this track, it creates an atmosphere as if Satan was actually going to come down to earth and there would be no tomorrow. This track later appeared on the album The Curse of the Scarecrow. 45 minutes already. Interestingly, not released by Cold Meat Industry, but by Release Entertainment, which was a sub-label for Relapse Entertainment. Yeah, entertainment, my ass. To this day, Megaptera remains probably my favorite death industrial project ever. Probably also because it always reminded me of nasty, sleazy horror movies from the 70s, like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, where evil is devoid of any elegance or grace. It is hideous and repulsive. Very suggestive music and very cinematic for Death Industrial. I absolutely love it, and it's my favorite part of the second CD of of the Absolute Supper. And after that we have Deutsche Nepal. Again, I repeat myself. This is another classic from the Cold Meat banner. The main project of Lina Baby Doll, who has always been closely associated with Roger Carmanik and Cold Meat industry. I think they are close friends. But also he has released albums for other cult labels such as Stahlblatt or Old Europa Cafe. Do I like Deutsche Nepal? Of course I do. It's a fairly accessible form of industrial, sometimes a bit more experimental, sometimes drawing from other genres, sometimes with those songs built on the principle of successive loop sequences, which somewhat connects Deutsche Nepal with krautrock. After all, the name obliges. It was never my kind of top project. But when I think about it now, it is one of the very few that I have been following for almost 30 years on a regular basis. I listen to subsequent albums and I find that Lina Baby Doll haven't ever fall below a certain level of musical decency. And in general, I like the last two sentences from the Deutsche Nepal biography. In booklet starting out as the rumble from a crematory incinerator for then hitting the dark ambient psychedelia phase. These days, Deutsche Nepal entertain the fans with nihilistic back to basics industrial. This versatility has made our favorite alcoholic playboy an appreciated partner in crime for bands down on the continent, such as Demon Lay Hidden Beneath the Cloud, Hybrids, and PAL. Yeah, okay. Alcoholic playboy. Nacht. It's a half of a legendary project, Akhast, quite unique because it was created by two women. It was unusual then, and it is quite rare even today on the dark ambient scene, which is very much dominated by men. Nacht is Tanja Stene and her partner in crime in Akhast was the late Andrea Hogan, aka Nebel. Nacht und Nebel. I wonder if it's a deliberate reference to the shocking documentary by Alain Resnais. Besides, this title is somehow liked by the industrial scene because we also had the Death in June album with that title, and there's also this label Nuit et Brouillard, which is night and fog in French. Back to Nacht. I didn't even know that she did graphic design for Burzum or Ulver and some other black metal bands. Yeah, I talk about everything except music because controversial take. This is not my dark ambient. Evil and witchy in a very straightforward way. For me, there's a lack of some hidden meaning, some nuance. These projects have always seemed trivial to me, although I respect and appreciate them, but this is not my music, you know. The song, the Nacht's song is titled Schwarzin. I wonder if Jan Roger Peterson took the name of his project directly from Nacht. In any case, I definitely prefer Jan Rogers' Schwarzin to Nacht or Akhast. And the same applies to Archon Satan. I could repeat what I said a moment ago. Too direct, too straightforward. I appreciate the vision, consistency, and contribution to the growth of the genre, but I don't listen to it. I definitely preferred other projects by both gentlemen, Mikael Stavostrand and Thomas Peterson and Inanna and Ordo et Librio. Okay, Onana wasn't a model of subtlety either, at least on early albums, because Signal or Minimal is a completely different story, but Inanna somehow speaks to me better. The track on The Absolute Supper is, according to the words in the booklet, a very final track and the closure of the project. I think a few years later, a compilation was released containing a few unpublished Arkansatani tracks, but overall, despite their relatively short time on the scene, this project definitely had some influence on the dark ambient genre. And apart from the label sub-labels, Frost was the first non-Swedish project to sign with Cold Meat Industry. I talked a lot about this Norwegian project in my retro review of You'll Never Sparkle in Hell. Sorry, 50 minutes. My voice is letting me down. So I won't talk about much of the Frost itself. But for me, when this compilation came out, Frost was still before his best moment. I don't really like the debut Autumn Departure. Here, Frost, which just like the protagonist we have in two tracks, the first of which is a slightly more experimental version of the music from Autumn Departure, based on not very sophisticated, cheap-sounding keyboards, samples of some voices and some radio interference. But the second track is quite interesting because it shows Jens Peter Nielsen's openness to completely different sounds. Slept Awake is not a first league or first division of in terms of sound either, but I like this track a lot because it comes close to almost pop style, saturated with slightly tribal rhythm, and the feeling of this track is like from some French erotic movie from the 70s, and that's pretty cool, you know. Frost, after a very dark album Nathanael, allowed himself to experiment in terms of style in a similar way, for example in such tracks like Chronos from the Immortal Legends compilation, or While We Made from the Temple of Kilowatts compilation. You know, a sense of great melodies, a certain lightness and freedom in approaching music. When necessary, it is solemn and dark. But sometimes Frost music has more breadth, space, and light, while some colleagues from the scene weren't able to do. A great project. It's a pity that Jens Peter Nielsen doesn't make music anymore. At least I think he doesn't make music anymore. And the last one on the compilation is Cinque Celle Diavolui, a Morty's side project, and I won't tell you about this one a lot either, because just like Frozen Faces, The Devil Must Kill was really sorry, the only song from this project I knew until yesterday, because yesterday, out of curiosity, I listened to a few tracks from the Devil's Songs album, and no, Cinque Celle Diavolui is also not my cup of tea. I mean, when such music comes out from the speakers, when I play, for example, old RPGs from Amiga, like Ishar or Waxworks, it's cool, but listening to this one in normal circumstances, no. With Cintacelli Diavolui, Mortis probably used even cheaper equipment than with his original project, and although I know there are fans of this sound, after all, today's resurrection of Dungeons Synth didn't come out of nowhere, but thank you, I'll pass. The track itself on the Absolute Supper is more kind of a grotesque horror song. Mortis even sings here, which kind of heralds his later albums. Musically different because he turned in a pop industrial direction, but the love for affection for singing remained. All in all, it's not such a bad song to close this compilation. The closing of an excellent compilation, one of the best that have ever appeared on the ambient industrial scene. Even despite those few fragments that today no longer make such impression as they once did, it's simply a must-have, a piece of history of this music. The Absolute Supper, the compilation from Cold Meat Industry. Okay, 55 minutes. Thanks for watching. Sorry for my mistakes. This is the longest video I have ever recorded, and my tongue and my throat and my mind are already very confused. And, thanks for watching, and see you soon.